You want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
You can't handle the truth!
Well, we're giving you the Michigan Sports Truth, the show that is honest, reveals the facts, truth, and statistics, and does not mess around. Follow me, Taylor Phillips, on Twitter at DT2Phillips. Email me at TaylorGatorPhillips14@yahoo.com. Follow Ed Smith on Twitter at EdSmith313, and go to our website at MichiganSportsTruth.com. Also like our Facebook page, The Michigan Sports Truth on Spreaker, and join our group with the exact same name. The Michigan Sports Truth podcast is also available on iHeartRadio and SoundCloud. Also a subsidiary of Sports Radio Detroit, thus available on iTunes and Podbean. The views expressed by the host of this podcast are not opinion-based or for entertainment purposes. They are actually facts and truth, no matter if other people like it or not. It is the Michigan Sports Truth, and nothing can ever stop it from being correct.
Hey there, Michigan sports fanatics, and welcome to episode 227 of the Michigan Sports Truth on Spreaker. I'm Taylor Phillips with my co-host Ed Smith. Thanks so much for being on here with me, Ed. How are you?
Well, I was doing quite fine. I was enjoying my weekend, Taylor. Just enjoying the new NBA 2K17, enjoying a nice Michigan win on Saturday. Things were going well. And then the Lions played. And then, of course, that ruined my mood, and now I'm in full-blown anger, pissed-off mode.
Yeah, you have every reason to be, and this is why this episode is actually going to be the first ever explicit episode of the Michigan Sports Truth on Spreaker. This is the week in review, but this is also the first ever explicit episode that I've ever had to record on Spreaker. But before
apologies in advance. Yeah, apologies in advance to those that might have, be sensitive ears or minors or whatever, or unsuitable, viewers nearby. Whatever your listening discretion is advised. So, yeah, you've been fairly warned.
Listener
for sure.
Discretion advised.
Oh, man!
So before we begin, I want to remind everyone to share this episode anyway, and our entire podcast on social media. Have their friends share that as well. And follow me on Spreaker as Taylor Phillips online at www.spreaker.com, because I want to tell them that the Michigan Sports Truth podcast on here on Spreaker is in search of local advertising sponsors. If anyone has a business that's interested in sponsoring this program, please email me at TaylorGatorPhillips14@yahoo.com or privately message me on Facebook or Twitter. You can also follow Sports Radio Detroit on Twitter at Sports Radio Detroit and like their Facebook page. Find their podcasts available on iTunes and Podbean. So, of course, the Lions in college football, plus the Tigers, the week in review. I've got a rant to share of my own in terms of the fans' beliefs that their manager, Brad Ausmus, may return in 2016. And a little bit of NBA before 5 questions returns. We did 10 questions last week in our month in review because of our 5-week hiatus. And now we're back to 5 questions for the first time. Since for the first time in 6 weeks, if you do the math. So with that being said, are you ready for some football? Let's kick this baby off.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions!
Well, the Lions, as you mentioned, blew a 15-3 lead. I just added the score. They lose 16-15. Both touchdowns were scored, including the game winner on the reception by Andre Johnson in the end zone with over a minute left in their home opener at Ford Field. In that game, 17 penalties against the Lions. Two or three of them may have been inaccurate, but you just can't rack up that many penalties. To 15 on the Titans. And let me just go ahead and sum this up. The Lions had every opportunity to blow out the Titans. And they didn't do that, and they didn't even beat the Titans. And then after the game, Coach Jim Caldwell said the penalties were not linked to a lack of discipline.
What's your problem there, pal? Can't a guy get a bit of sleep? Don't bug me.
Absolute total bullshit, because Jim Caldwell, I thought the reason why he was brought in to coach his team to begin with was to help the team with its supposed discipline issues that it had under Jim Schwartz. So clearly, we've seen, we're now 3 seasons in, none of that has still changed. And as clearly evidence of what you saw on Sunday, you had a game where it was almost as if there was a third color on the field besides the team's uniforms and the color of the field. It was yellow, all the damn flags that was being thrown out. And of course, unfortunately, as it turned out, those penalties played a big difference in determining the outcome in this game, because on an instance where the Lions were trying to extend their lead, they had an instance where they went from first and goals from the 1 to first and goal from the 26-yard line on account of 3 penalties, 2 of which took away touchdowns. And, oh my goodness, it was just so infuriating and frustrating to know that literally they seem to be a team in its own way, but you can't be surprised, because how many times, how many games, how many seasons, how many years, how many decades have we seen the Lions continuously shoot themselves on their own foot, not stay, keep getting in their own way to basically prevent themselves from winning. But that was just only one simple facet, one minor detail of this whole atrocity of a collapse that we saw on Sunday.
Yeah, and yet some of the fans, especially one of them on Instagram, Ashley Christine, says that they blame it on the referees and not on the team that is won only one playoff game in 58 years, now going on 59, possibly 59 now, considering the fact that this ineptitude in the Lions is actually continuing, starting with their head coach. I mean, what the fuck is going on?
Jesus, I mean, first and foremost, if it wasn't just the issue with the police and the discipline, or rather the lack of discipline, that was pissing me off. It was the fact that clearly, very early on, the way this offense was rolling, they were down the field trying to extend the lead, and from the 39-yard line on 4th down and 3, Jim Caldwell, he could have one of 2 choices. He could have either A, had Matthew Stafford, who was just gone on fire in that first quarter, in that first half in general, try to find his way, whether it would be a short pass or using his legs or whatever the case may be, to get those 3 extra yards to get the first down and continue to drive. Or he could have very well gotten Matt Prater. Mind you, Matt Prater has once, I believe it's the NFL record, or one time on the NFL record, whatever the case may be is, he hit a 64-yard field goal during his time with the Denver Broncos. Hit it outdoors, high altitude or not. You can hit a 64-yarder from outdoors, you have a strong-ass leg. So if he can hit a 64-yard field goal from outdoors, what's the problem with him trying, or at least attempting to hit a mere 56-yard field goal from inside of a dome? In the dome, not in the air, not in the elements, inside on whatever it is. You couldn't bring, or at least try to attempt that if you were too much of a pussy to not go for it on 4th down. I bet you could have really used those 3 points when you needed it at the end, didn't you, shithead?
I know. Now the Spreaker studio is not as freezing up again, because I entered a new soundbite with it playing. But so we're gonna have to. Oh Christ! We're gonna have to forget the soundbites again. We're still on the air. Yeah.
Yeah, at least we're still on the air. At least we can get this out.
Yep. Mm-hmm. But my God. Just such ineptitude. But
I mean, it's like something, a pattern that we've been seeing now, not just in games, but in past few years at the very football era. They can be a very good, almost an excellent first quarter team. They're just tremendously shitty the rest of the way, especially in the 4th quarter where it matters the most, where you're trying to hold on the lead, salt away the game, or try to come back and win. Now, granted, they pulled a few rabbits out of their asses before, i.e. last week in Indianapolis, but that was partly entirely due to the fact that Chuck Pagano threw him a ball on occasion. This week, you're dealing with a much different team, much different coach. Oh, by the way, you weren't dealing with a secondary that was banged up, giving you a freeway to fall all over the field. Conversely, though, that did affect your defense with the myriad of injuries that you had to go through before and during the game. But we'll get to that in a little bit. Let's keep on this first subpoint of how Jim Caldwell played a big part in us losing this game. First the penalties, then it was a 4th and 3 decision where it was clearly obvious you should have done something with that. And again, another case where Tennessee found a way to make adjustments. You can clearly tell Tennessee found a way to make adjustments in the second half. Jim Caldwell did not. How many times have we seen this broken record now? Like 6 times now?
Oh, man. Insurmountable amount of times, if you ask me, Ed.
I mean, at least, I remember watching the Fox 2 pregame show on Sunday with Dan Miller, Wojo, Jamie Sampson, and Jennifer Hammond. One of the keys that Wojo and Jamie mentioned was the fact that the Lions have a weakness. They are successful at letting tight ends run all over them. Whether it's A, they have a weak linebacking core, or B, their secondary is absolute trash, which I've been trying to express for the past 6 years. Or at the very least, this team needs to do whatever they can to get better in the secondary through the draft. They've continuously ignored that, wasting it on shitty first-round selections, whether it be on the offensive line or the tight end spot. Okay, so clearly you're not listening to my advice or anybody else's advice, whatever, or trying to, at the very least, use high, if not first round, then use higher draft picks instead of waiting for the bottom of the barrel of the 5th, 6th, or 7th round. Use our cornerback.
Yeah, and that just shows you right there why the Lions lost that game. Just you can't. There's just no excuse for any of this. Now the Lions have to go to Green Bay and play the Packers.
Mind you, a pissed-off Packers team that just lost to the Minnesota Vikings this past Sunday night. And they're in Lambeau, too. Yeah, you're not going to beat them 2 years in a row in Lambeau, especially when they're coming off a loss, when you know Aaron Rodgers is going to be pissed and ready to ball the hell out. So get ready for that one. Oh, and you lost Ziggy Ansah to a high ankle sprain injury, and you don't know when he's coming back. Oh, and you might have lost DeAndre Levy for the rest of the year, because maybe his parasite returned. Oh, yeah, things are going real fucking swell right now for the Lions. Absolutely swell.
Yeah, Amir Abdullah and DeAndre Levy and Ziggy Ansah, those are the 3 key players that you need on this team. Even if Jim Caldwell was the head coach, you still need them.
Yeah. I mean, it got so bad to the point where even the reserves were getting hurt. I mean, Washington, who was filling in for Levy, he had himself a good game as well, but then he got hurt. Thank God Devin Taylor was able to step up for Ziggy Ansah when he got hurt. Otherwise, the Stevens might have given up more points. And you know what? That's probably a good thing because, that's the one thing we got to note here. Despite the injuries, despite the fact that this team has absolute weakness in its secondary and a weakness at covering tight ends, I think that was their 16th or 17th touchdown that they've given up to a tight end in the last 18 games. Despite all that, they still managed to hold the Titans to 16 points. I think that's a good mark on how well the defensive line showed in spurts, especially in the first half. Like I mentioned before with Devin Taylor, he had a couple of sacks. Kerry Hyder, he's already my front runner for defensive MVP. The impact that he's had in causing havoc, pressure, sacks, whatever you name it. He's had a tremendous start to this season so far, and it looks like they're going to need him as more than ever, especially now with this news of Ziggy Ansah's high ankle sprain injury. So between the defensive line, hell, even saw Lodi, I'm getting straight to off the topic here, but the defensive line, it's fine. It would be better if we had Ziggy in there, but it's still fine for now. Unfortunately, our defense is not going to be able to hold to 16 points a week, especially when A, your secondary sucks, B, your linebacking core has already been as is, and C, you might have lost, you don't know when the hell Levy is coming back, especially now, and ditto for Ziggy. So, if we somehow hold Green Bay to 16 points this Sunday, I'll laugh my ass off.
Yeah, and the most important thing, you got to cut back on your penalties. You can't expect the referees to bail you out like every play. They're going to flag you for penalties that you actually committed, not just because you think you didn't commit it, you actually did. And stop blaming the referees for making incorrect calls. They make the correct calls. That goes for the fans too, and the media.
Yeah, not every single time that you lose, it's not because of a ref show or the refs blew a call. Very rarely will you see that in some instances, in my view. You can blame this loss on the fact that it didn't have a vendetta against the Lions. That's not why they threw those 17 flags on them. They did it because, for the most part, they were doing the wrong shit. That's why they threw all those damn flags out. Okay, so you can blame that. You can blame your idiot head coach for again being
for defending his players and he. I don't know. I don't know if he was blaming the referees instead of the players, but it seems like he was not blaming anybody on the field.
How about as the head coach, take some fucking accountability and responsibility for yourself? Say, hey, we got 17 penalties out there. I'm the head coach. It's on me. I'm going to do what I can to fix that. Simple. But explain that in 5 fucking seconds.
But of course he's never going to say that because Jim Caldwell is comatose, like Jeff Moss pointed out, the editor-in-chief of the Detroit Sports Rag, the founder thereof.
He's a fucking nincompoop. That's what he is.
Yeah, definitely is. By the way, you can follow Jeff Moss on Twitter at JeffMossDSR. His latest episode 45 of the Detroit Sports Rag podcast is now available. But this episode of the Michigan Sports Truth on Spreaker is also available. But it's synchronized with Sports Radio Detroit. But it follows everything that Jeff Moss reports and says on Twitter at JeffMossDSR. Follow him. Follow Sports Radio Det. Follow me, DT2 Phillips, and follow Ed Smith 313 on Twitter. Hey, link us all up. Facebook and Twitter. We've got the truth. Jeff Moss has got the truth. Hey, we're the truth detectors here.
Yep, and we do it to sort out all the weed and all the bullshit here. So, and another issue that was really starting to piss me off is some fans, not all, but a good amount that seem so ready and happy to throw this one solely on Matt Stafford. That Stafford was the reason, because he threw the pick. It was his fault that he lost. When if you watched the whole fucking game, you realize he was one of the reasons that we almost won it to begin with. You saw how he did in the first half. You saw how he was slinging the ball around. For Christ's sakes, he was trucking over quarterbacks. Okay? He was throwing lead blockers for his running backs. Stafford was doing every single damn thing he could to possibly win us that game. And yes, he did throw the bad interception. But I'll remind you, he was not the one that, the Lions had 7 drop passes? 7 drop passes in that game. God knows how many from Golden Tate alone that could have gotten us a key first down to help milk away the clock and seal the game. And I think Theo Riddick might have had a drop near the end zone, which could have been an easy walk-in touchdown. So between that, lack of execution near the red zone, and of course the ungodly amount of penalties, the Lions left, get this, 11 potential points off the board. Instead of scoring 2 touchdowns that could have put them up 19 or 26, gave them 26 points, they had to settle for a field goal and got rewarded with 15, as you saw. And then, of course, they got outscored the rest of the way and couldn't do a damn thing. And another thing that was unfortunate to see, though, they weren't horrible this week, but compared to what they did last week, the offensive line did not do a good job, specifically with Taylor Decker. He's a rookie. He's a young kid. I get it. But, he picked a bad time to get beat and absolutely dismantled by Brian Arakpo on that sack on Stafford on that last drive of the game. He only got beat 2 times by Arakpo, but, one earlier. But that second one absolutely killed him because it forced him to waste a timeout. They put him in a bad spot field position-wise to try to move up the field. Thank God Stafford was able to get that pass to Ebron on 3rd and 19. Otherwise, oh God, we would have been talking about what Taylor Decker didn't do on that last drive. So Taylor Decker's kind of off the hook a little bit, but not a lot. So, for people like Dennis 15 to say, oh, in one breath they want to blame it on Stafford, and in the second breath they want to say, oh, penalties and drops helps too, then you're already contradicting yourself. Stafford, 22 of 40, like I said, when you count in the fact that he had seven drops from his receivers, that lets you know that Stafford was not the reason, or at least was not part of the main reason why they lost. In fact, he was one of the reasons they almost had a chance to win to begin with. So if you want to go in terms of totem pole level of who deserves the most blame, Matthew Stafford should be. If he's anywhere but the bottom, you need your damn head examined.
Yeah, you want to.
And I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that as a Stafford defender or supporter, even though I am like I said, I've been a defender of his since day one. But come on, you watch that game, and if you tell me that Matthew Stafford is one of the top 2 or even 3 reasons why they lost that game, you're out of your mind.
Yeah, and Dennis Fithian and Dan Leach are out of their minds if they're going to even consider hosting an uncensored show on 97.1 The Ticket, WXYT in Southfield. I think that show is an absolute joke, just like Detroit Sports 105.1's shows. Any one of their shows before 105.1 changed their formats. But back to the Lions, if you want to talk about a lack of discipline, sum up too many penalties and too many turnovers, and those couple times that you mentioned the lack of protection of Matthew Stafford, the quarterback, by their offensive line, and their head coach Jim Caldwell defending the entire team regardless, especially on those penalties, summed up the loss and summed up the Lions. A lack of discipline all around. That's just pathetic.
I'm just gonna go the NCAA route. It was a lack of institutional control.
Yep. Absolutely. That's just awful. Ridiculous, pathetic, disgraceful. That's what the Lions have always been. One playoff win in 58 years, going on 59 possible. We can't wait to...
Not possible. Inevitable.
Inevitable, yeah.
Especially with this moron as head coach.
Yeah, this comatose moron as head coach. How many fucking years does this comatose head coach have left in his contract?
I honestly don't know. I hope this is the last year, but who knows? Maybe because as long as Martha Ford is still alive, she's still friends with Jimmy. He's a nice guy. He goes to church, all that. We don't care. The fans, all due respect, do not care about that. They want to see production. They want to see progress, and most importantly, they want to see wins. Wins, damn you, wins!
Well, you know what? To top this off, nice guys, like you just mentioned, nice guys finish last. Nice guys finish last. That's the Lions right there. That's another example.
The rate they're going, you're going to end up last in the damn division.
Yeah, almost every year. That's how nice guys finish. Last. Dead last. Not only in the division, but maybe somewhere in the entire friggin' NFL. Or in the NFC. However you rank them, they're just rock bottom. Really, that explains their history. That explains the perspective of the Lions. Any more steam you want to blow off, Ed, about this Lions franchise or organization?
This is a help. I can't wait till they go 8-8 and Caldwell's sorry ass is fired. That's all I gotta say.
8-8. How about 4-12? Maybe that'll be better.
But I'm thinking, as because they're gonna face a few crap teams. They're gonna give them they're going to give them some good wins. I mean, for God's sakes, they got the Bears twice. Okay, so that's 2 wins right there. I think they can manage at least 4 or 5 more wins based on the schedule that they have.
Jay Cutler is out for the rest of the year. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, I heard, but even still, that won't help the Bears. I don't see Matt Forte. I don't see Brandon Marshall. I don't see Alshon Jeffrey. Yeah, but guess what? They don't have Matt Forte. They don't have Brandon Marshall. They don't have Alshon Jeffrey. Shit, they don't even have Martellus Bennett anymore. Okay, so those guys are going to help you out. Jay Cutler's shitty already. So what's the point? Just replacing shit with more shit. So please, if they don't sweep the Bears, that'll be even more laughable reason for Caldwell to get fired.
See, that's my point. The Lions took on a shitty team in the Titans, and they lost. They lost to a shitty team in the Titans, Ed.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows how many shitty teams the Lions will lose to this year? It could be 5 or 6. That schedule is not as easy as you think, penning that loss, that type of loss.
Yeah, and that was a win they desperately needed if they had any, laughable hopes and dreams or pipe dreams of trying to make the playoffs this year. They needed to win 3 of their first 4 games. Now you've already lost 1, and now you got to go on. Your next 2 games are again on the road against divisional opponents, starting with Green Bay.
Mm-hmm. Damn right.
So yeah, you're pretty close to up Schitt's Creek without a paddle here.
Yep. The Bears are after the Packers. So Packers Sunday at 1 on Fox, Bears Sunday at 1 on Fox. Now we're going to shift to college football, since we...
Some more positive news for once.
Yeah, just barely. The Michigan State Spartans barely had to barely hang on to beat the 18th ranked Notre Dame Fighting Irish, 36-28 on NBC in South Bend. The Spartans were 12th ranked after the Furman win 2 weeks before then. Notre Dame struck first, but then Michigan State scored 36 unanswered points. And then Notre Dame stormed right back, and Michigan State's offense started to play conservatively in that fourth quarter until it was an 8-point game again. And then Michigan State started to feel more desperate to come up with different plays to run out the clock, make Notre Dame burn their 2 final timeouts, and then R.J. Shelton, the first down, the run for the first down and more to the 25-yard line, with just over a minute to go, sealed it. But that Corley guy, made a couple key catches. One of them for a touchdown that saved an interception, and the other catch saved the game for the Spartans. They did, because that helped the Spartans not give the Irish a chance to tie it with a touchdown and a 2-point conversion.
Not to mention offensive contributions from running back L.J. Scott, who had a couple of big runs, including a touchdown, and R.J. Shelton, the receiver, I believe, who was used mainly, though, for his running in some instances, including on the game-sealing first down when they need to get it in order to prevent getting Notre Dame the ball back. But still, let's talk about how impressive a victory this was for Michigan State. Almost, silly comeback aside from ND. This was as close to a complete team victory that you saw, because they executed on offense, they didn't fuck up there. Defense, they did what they had to do, forced turnovers, and special teams, my God. Really, the turning point of that game was late in the first quarter when MSU got the ball back on a miscommunication, whatever the case may be, that led to a muffed or botched punt return attempt by an ND, led to a loose ball, and then the Michigan State recovered it, and then it was on to the races from there. That led to them scoring 36 unanswered. That's when you almost thought the game was practically over right there, but give credit to ND, they scored 21 answers to make it close, but in the end, Michigan State had their probably, I guess if you can do memories of the drive to close out the Big Ten championship against Iowa last year, they replicated some of that against Notre Dame to close out this victory here.
Yeah, and fans from East Lansing, especially, were having bad memories of that 2006 choke job at Spartan Stadium against the Irish.
10 years, exactly 10 years.
That almost happened again. And back in 2006, Mike Valenti made that famous rant, and
or infamous, however you look at it.
Yeah. But had the Spartans blew that game, he would have done the same thing again. And East Lansing, the fans in East Lansing, the Spartan fans everywhere, would have gone irate.
It would have gone berserker. Because, this would have been such a horrific loss on so many levels. National stage, against a rival. Oh, by the way, depending on where you're on the rankings, it almost essentially kills your chances to even attempt to do a push for the top spot in the rankings or a possible playoff push right then and there before we even get to the conference schedule. So this was a game Michigan State needed to win. And quite frankly, a game a lot of people probably didn't expect them to win. They were like what was the margin of underdog? I'm sure Notre Dame was the favorite. I just can't remember what the spread was, but clear, obviously, Michigan State had no problem being the underdog. It's like, there seems to be a trademark of theirs, especially under Mark D'Antonio in recent years, where, they've only lost, 2 or 3 games where they came into the game as not the favorite. So, whatever Mark D'Antonio does in terms of planting that chip on the shoulders of his players, it must work every single time because it's the thing by now. You got to learn to never discount or underestimate Michigan State because they can always pull a rabbit out their ass and beat you. I.e. last year, i.e. Little Giants, i.e. last year against Michigan State and Ohio State, or Little Giants, whatever the case may be, or against Stanford in the Rose Bowl even. So. It's become a trademark, and at this point, I'm not too surprised by it because that's how they play. That's how Mark D'Antonio coaches them up, and he needs to be very commended for that.
That's true. So the Spartans are still undefeated, 2-0, with their bye week already out of the way in between Furman and Notre Dame. And now they start Big Ten play this upcoming Saturday. They are back home at Spartan Stadium in East Lansing. They welcome in the Wisconsin Badgers, who have been a particular rival of Michigan State. But gonna be a good one. Kickoff is at noon, and it's going to be televised on BTN. But we're going to save that for the football in the mitten preview. Just less than actually just about 46 hours from this.
All I can say is that's a very, very intriguing game that could have a lot of, I guess you could say, after effects that could excuse me, I can't find a word right now. I've spat out so much anger I can't think properly right now. But yeah, it can have good, big ramifications, not just in the Big Ten Conference, but in the top 10 of the AP as we know it throughout the rest of the season.
That's true. And then we got the Michigan Wolverines. They are 4th ranked. They were 4th ranked going into their Colorado Buffaloes game, and they fell and they fell behind 21-7 after one quarter, which is unbelievable, the wrong side of unbelievable on our behalf or at our expense. But the Wolverines, the Maize and Blue, they came back. They beat the Colorado Buffaloes 45-28. And throughout the mid portions of that game, it turned out to be a very closer game before the Wolverines pulled away in the end. So, your thoughts?
It was a game that, definitely it was a game that started out very ominously. You had, a couple things go very wrong for Michigan, whether it was, the sack fumble that led to the score, offense stalling on drives, of course, defense giving up early big plays. Liafu, the quarterback for Colorado, he had a very good game. In fact, if anything, you could say that if he had not gotten hurt, we might be looking at a different tune, and as we might be talking about a whole different story as to what could have been the outcome of that game here. So, Wolverines, I guess you could say they caught a bit of a break when he got hurt. But hey, when you're a good team and good, lucky breaks happen, you got to take advantage of them, and that's exactly what they did. They were able to get their head straight, make right adjustments, whether it be finding a way to get J.U. Chesson involved, because you noticed early on in the game he was not getting good looks, or rather not getting the ball thrown to him enough, because I believe Colorado, mind you, has some good secondary, has some good cornerbacks in their field, was able to contain a couple of their weapons, not all, of course. Guess what? You got Amar Darboh, you got Jake Butt. You can't cover everybody, but they're at least able to contain Chesson on the passing plays. So Harbaugh and company made some adjustments. It's a couple of times, tried to do the jet sweep play, get a guy of Chesson's speed and caliber, get him the ball, give him some open space, see what happened, and it led to one of the touchdowns that was scored to help kickstart that comeback. Another thing that I liked seeing was them Michigan trying to get started with their running attack, because that was a thing that we mentioned coming into this game. They had a problem establishing against lesser opponents. Now you're facing a much more tougher, or at least a little bit more tougher, more legit opponent than the likes of Hawaii and UCF. I thought for the most part they did a good job in getting their running game established. They didn't run it pounded up the middle. I think that was the smart route, because they tried it early on. It wasn't too great bet, because all those defensive bodies are still fresh. They're going to have more energy. Of course, they're going to stop you up the middle. So use your speed and athletic advantage around the edge, around the sidelines, whether it be some toss plays, some bubble screens, whatever. Tire out those guys around the edges, and that later on you can use their fatigue against them and pound it up the middle to great effect, and that's exactly what they did. Davion Smith finally scored his first touchdown of the season. Ty Isaac scored himself a touchdown. He looked good out there as well. Offensively, like I said, shaky start, but you got to commend them for it, because they didn't quit, they didn't give up, they picked themselves up. This basically felt like a back and forth boxing slugfest, if you want to use some boxing analogy here. I'm probably doing it because I'm in the mood from seeing what I saw from Canelo Alvarez knocking out Liam Smith on Saturday night with a perfectly placed left hook to the body. So that's basically what happened to Michigan. They took a left hook to the body early on, stunned them, but they got back up. They didn't get counted out. They got up off their feet, dusted themselves off, and commenced to open up a can on Colorado. From turning a 21-7 deficit into a 38-7 outpour the rest of the way. It takes, one, communication, cohesiveness, and cooperation on offense. Two, your defense coming up big, even though you were getting lit up early on, especially even some parts of the second half, which reminds me, by the way, as good as their defensive line is with Chris Wormley and Hurst and Godin, their secondary still has some issues that they need to work out on. I know Jabril Peppers is good and all that, but when you have guys like Jordan Lewis available and he's dressed but still not playing, it shows. Trust me, it shows tremendously on plays, and it definitely showed on Saturday. So if Michigan has any type of key or want to have any type of hopes of long-term future success in this season, it is imperative. It behooves them to make sure that Jordan Lewis is on that field, because he is a big X factor to their defense performing well, or at the very least in their secondary, because they're straight at defensive line position. There's no problem with that. While we're on the topic of Jabril Peppers, though, I will say it was I mentioned I happened to catch Mike Valenti on the radio earlier this week. In a way, basically saying Peppers was overrated. He didn't get all the hype. Well, I think this game showcased why Peppers was all the hype. I mean, for God's sake, he had 3.5 tackles for a loss, had a sack, had a couple plays in offense where he showcased his speed and running ability, and of course, what he did on special teams. And in total, he accounted for over 200 total purpose yards, and had himself a fancy punt return for a touchdown. So, in terms of, hey, what do you want to say? The hype is justified? Is it overblown? Is it for real? I think, at least for this game, the hype was real, and I think it made Peppers, at least for this year, a possible dark horse Heisman candidate. I don't think he's going to get any serious contention because when you deal with the likes of Lamar Jackson, Christian McCaffrey, and the rest, and the sort of J.T. Barrett and the sort, he's not going to get that much love from the voters. I think if he stays next year, and maybe even one more year after that, he'll be a serious Heisman contender for next year. But still, he can make himself a good early candidate, make himself a potential candidate to look out for in the future. I will say that. It was nice to see what could have been a potential travesty turn into an electrifying showcase that was known as the Jabril Pepper Show. So, very impressed by this Michigan team because they would find a way. They were in trouble early, but instead of folding, they overcame the adversity. And you know what? If you need to have championship type seasons, you need to go through games like that, where it'll be early, late, whatever. You need to show that you're all, you're not just all, you're more than just all bark and no bite. You can definitely bite back as well, especially when you've been bitten. So Michigan did a good job of showcasing that. I'm sure that was a good testament to how their head coach, Jim Harbaugh, coaches them up and has them ready for any type of situation. So props to Harbaugh on that. And it's nice to see them go through. It's good to see them go through their growing pains early, so that they can be a well developed, finished, and polished out product by the end of the season. For instance, Wilton Spate, he didn't look so great out there. I will say though, it might have been the fact that he was probably dealing with a shoulder injury of some sort because he took a big hit early on. I think it was on that sack fumble that caused the Colorado touchdown. He landed directly on his shoulder, so that might have messed up his ability to at least throw the ball in some instances. But using his legs, using his feet on certain places to scramble, get out of pocket, create plays for himself, that's a great opportunity for Michigan. He hit he hit Brad Perry on a crucial 3rd down and long, led to a big gain and eventual touchdown. For instance, on one play, he still has a safety valve with Jake Butt as well as, Darbo and Chesson whenever they're not covering them. So, Spade is fine. He will go through his growing pains, but I think as long as he stays healthy, manages the game, doesn't be too, thinking too much or try to stay in the pocket too long. In some games, just use his head, use his feet a little bit more often to get out of plays where it's unnecessary to him to take a loss or whatever. As he develops, this team will get better because they're already fine defensively. You know what they have offensively. Really, like I said, one of the question mark was coming into the season, how can they develop a quarterback knowing Jake Rudock will not be there? I think, not a full-blown replication of what we'll be seeing, but we'll be seeing something similar in process. What we saw with Rudock last year, we'll be seeing that with Spade this year.
So with that win, the Wolverines somehow stay in the number 4 spot in the AP poll.
I think that was due to the fact that Louisville had an absolute monster game against Florida State. I mean, Christ's sakes, they put a 60 spot on it, 63 points. Okay, when you do that, get the top 10 team, of that caliber in Florida State, you deserve some accolade and praise along your way. So I got no problem with Louisville getting that number 3 spot. I think that was all, and also another part of that was Michigan. They did not have an impressive first, or at least early going against Colorado. That lingered in some of the minds of the AP voters, I'm sure. So that led to Michigan staying where they are in the top 4. That's just fine because you need to be in that Final Four anyway to get into the playoffs. So trust me, once the season moves along and they get into deeper and deeper conference play, and they face some of the teams that are near, or in this case, in the case of Ohio State, ahead of them currently in the rankings, as long as they take care of business, they got nothing to worry about in terms of consideration for the Final Four, if you want to call it that.
All right. Well, with all that being said, the Wolverines begin their Big Ten schedule against the Penn State Nittany Lions Saturday at 3:30 on ABC. We'll preview that 2 days from now. Now over to the Central Michigan Chippewas. They took good care of the UNLV Rebels, 44-21. It was a close game. The Rebels struck first on a block punt in the end zone, recovered for a touchdown, but CMU went up 14-7. They had a chance to win, to go ahead 21-7, but they failed to convert on a third down, and then Brian Evie missed a field goal. The Chippewa Sports Network crew was telling its listening audience that they were feeling the wind blow out at Kelly Short Stadium. It was blowing hard. It was a factor, but half of that's on Mother Nature, but the other half of it is on Brian Evie for not estimating, for not calculating the correct estimation, or estimating the right calculation, whichever way you slice it, of the wind gauge, of the wind speed. When he tried kicking it in that field goal, he missed 2 field goals at least.
Thanks.
But CMU scored more touchdowns than field goals. That's why they came up. That's how they came up with 44 points. That's my Chippewas right there. And they pulled away the second half. They led 28-21 at halftime, but they held the Rebels completely off the board in the second half. CMU's defense was stellar. A shaky first half, but the Chippewas got themselves an energy boost from Coach John Bonamigo, the head coach of my Chippewas, the maroon and gold. Their defense lit it up since then, and the final score was 44-21. Cooper Rush, 6 touchdown passes, another record. That's one thing I kept track of. But it was a like you mentioned, Ed. It was a hangover type start due to the fact that they upset Oklahoma State the week before on the road, the 22nd ranked Cowboys. They found that block punt in the end zone for the UNLV Rebels, Nevada Las Vegas Rebels, for that game opening touchdown as a wake up call, and they got pretty, and it was a seesaw from there until halftime when the CMU Chippewas got that energy boost of their own in their locker rooms, and they just finished off the Rebels. And they improved to 3-0 and stay undefeated.
I think that deserves an obligatory fire up Chips.
Yep. Now they're at Virginia this upcoming Saturday at 12:30 on Fox Sports Detroit, taking on the Musketeers. We'll try to preview that as best we can. Now with college football out of the way and pro football out of the way, it's time to play the rest of baseball here. The Tigers split their 4-game series at home last week against the Minnesota Twins at Comerica Park. Then they inevitably lose 2 out of 3 to the Cleveland Indians at Progressive Field. Then they beat by winning the last game of that series 9-5. Then they beat the Twins at Target Field 8-1 because the Twins are bad. But when the Tigers lost to the Indians 11-4 Friday, we realized they were then 3 games back of the second spot of the American League Wild Card Division standings, tied with the Seattle Mariners, and then they were still in that exact same predicament after Saturday's 1-0 10-inning defeat, which made me think my hashtag #TankToFireAusmus movement on Twitter may finally be cooking a little extra. But now that they've won 2 in a row over Cleveland 9-5 Sunday and 8-1 in Minnesota earlier tonight, we sense they're trying to come back in the standings, which just doesn't help the possibility of Brad Ausmus being fired. The Tribe, on the other hand, already had that Central Division pretty much wrapped up, so we don't have to worry about that. But before I get to my
I've stopped following them.
Before I get to my rant, I want to get your thoughts.
Yeah, well, basically, this is a very weird week as well for the Tigers because for some inexplicable reason, they found themselves splitting a 4-game set with the worst team in baseball, the Minnesota Twins last week, which included, of course, vintage dumbass Ausmus moves like, why in God's name are you pitching to Brian Dozier? He's one of the hottest hitters in baseball right now. Why in the world are you pitching to him? Especially when you had a base open in the clutch spot. So that cost you a game right there. So, for all those people wanting to see Ausmus back, you keep giving you reasons why that should not be the case for next year. But we're going to get that in a little bit with you, Taylor, and what you got to say. So hold on to that. As in terms of the rest of the week, what else to expect?
Well, fans don't want Ausmus to be back necessarily, but they think he'll be back. But go on.
Yeah, my slight correction on that, but what needs to be said? Like the Cleveland Indians have kicked our asses all year. This is the second win we finally got off of them. Now what is a 13-2 deficit? That right there, in a nutshell, is why the Cleveland Indians are going to be running away with this division. Because when it mattered most, they beat the shit out of us head to head.
Right.
I mean, not to mention the fact that, for some reason, whether it be the fact that he probably is dealing with a hurt knee, but Victor Martinez has continuously shown he does not deserve to be in that 4 spot behind Cabrera. And again, Ausmus continues to show why he should be fired by not doing something, not changing the lineup, unless circumstances force his hand as if he thinks that's a bad thing. What's wrong with switching Victor with JD, or for that case, Justin Upton? Because he's been hitting more lately than what Victor has. Move Justin up, move Victor down. Idiot.
Yeah, move Victor down, move JD to the cleanup spot. Maybe move Victor to the 6th spot because Justin Upton is red hot as well. Move Jay up to the 5 spot. Move Victor to the 6th spot.
And you're seeing, it was one thing. I'll admit, even though I was expecting to lose, most that series against Cleveland, it was a little bit disheartening to see an excellent effort from Justin Verlander be completely wasted by this inept offense. Like, for God's sakes, really? You couldn't do anything to help, especially one of those games where, their starting pitcher for Cleveland goes out in the first, breaks his hand or whatever in the first or second inning, and then the rest of the game, you get to deal with the Indians bullpen, and you don't score a single run off of them? Pathetic.
Disgraceful. But I'll give them something. They scored 9 runs on Sunday. They picked it up a bit, and then they scored 8 runs against the Minnesota Twins. 17 runs in their last 2 games is good. Maybe almost great, but good enough for 2 wins.
Yeah, they're not completely right, and those 2 wins are important because they're not dead. They still have a chance, to get to that second one of those 2 wild card spots. And it's getting close. It's really, really thinly close. They're currently 1.5 back against Baltimore, which helps them out because not only are they dealing with the Red Sox, they still have a series coming up against the other team that the Tigers are catching. Baltimore has a series coming up with Toronto. So there's that. And not to mention that Baltimore still has to play a Yankees team at the end of the year who's either is still going to be fighting for the playoff lives or will likely be trying to play the role of spoilers. So in terms of schedule favoring, that is one advantage that does help out the Tigers, knowing that Baltimore has to finish out this series with Boston, still has to play Toronto, and has to play the Yankees at the end of the year. That's one thing that's going for them.
All right, well, I need to get this off my chest one more time to all the fans out there, not just our audience, but all the Tiger fans everywhere. We still keep hearing from fans in the media that Brad Ausmus may return next year, like we mentioned before, because the entire Tigers front office, starting with their general manager, Al Avila, and their coaching staff, is going to keep making excuses such as injuries and how close the Tigers are in the postseason and how keeping Ausmus keeps repeating, just like general manager Dave Dombrowski and they kept Jim Leyland when fans wanted him fired. Well, let me tell everyone an analogy about Al Avila here and why and how different he is from David Dombrowski. This is Al Avila's first full year as the Tigers' general manager. Last year, he took over for then-fired Dave Dombrowski in late August. Not in April, in August. And he realized that Brad Ausmus had only 1 year left in his contract and thought Ausmus was smart enough at sabermetrics, so he gave him the one last year in his contract to manage this team. Al Avila was an assistant GM to Dombrowski before Double D got fired and got hired by the Red Sox, by the way, may I add. But Avila is different than Dombrowski. Now, and I'm going to contrast that to you fans right now. Also, the media that thinks that Brad Ausmus may return with all those stupid excuses. Dombrowski didn't use any statistical mathematics at all and instead kept his loyalty to Jim Leyland and the amount of talent in the Tigers roster regardless of any stats. And even though he was attracted by Miguel Cabrera's 2012 MVP stats, his Triple Crown stats, mind you, that was the centerpiece of assistance for the Tigers to their trip to the World Series where they got swept by the San Francisco Giants. Now here's Al Avila's part. Avila, once again, like I mentioned many times in the past, Avila is a sabermetrics GM and hasn't proved much or any loyalty yet through this year, except for his opinion that Ausmus is a good leader, quote unquote, from back in either May or June. Avila still has yet a whole lot to prove as the Tigers' general manager. So he's only getting started as general manager. He's still just getting warmed up. It's his first full year. Last year were only his first month and change. That doesn't count in my book. That shouldn't count in anybody's book. So if you're going to think right off the bat that Avila has the same kind of loyalty with Ausmus to keep him for 2017, just like Dombrowski had with Leyland after 2012, after the Tigers got swept by the Giants in the World Series, then you're only guessing and having such negative thoughts. Now, I understand the pain you people feel about this 32-year World Series championship drought that we're all going through, and I'm going through it most of all, but you people still don't know what Avila is made of as a general manager yet. Stop bitching and complaining about loyalty for right now. Let the season play out and see what happens after it concludes. Then who knows? Maybe depending on how the Tigers fare overall, whether they make the playoffs or not, Avila may soon thereafter make the right decision finally and terminate Brad Ausmus as manager by declining Ausmus's option for next year, and then hiring a manager who can use sabermetrics, is willing to comprehend the high leverage situations and make the right decisions, and has the sense of urgency. The two nominees that Jeff Moss pointed out, Gabe Kapler and the one and only Manny Acta.
Hi, Manny.
As far as I'm concerned, Manny Acta has that 1-year contract right now going on this year as the third base coach of the Seattle Mariners. After this year, who knows? After this year, Acta is a free agent, which gives him a chance, which gives the Tigers a chance to sign Acta up and hire him as a general manager and sign him to a contract. So, again, about this Ausmus excuse crap, you're out of your fucking minds. Stop being delusional. Stop being too negative. Toughen up from all this pain. And just be patient and let the season ride out. Okay? For goodness sakes, stop using the injury excuse. Stop thinking about the injury excuses. You are unable to read Al Avila's mind. We as a whole fan base do not know what's really inside of Al Avila's head yet. Just let the results come at the end of the season. I'm not gonna predict what's going to happen. I'm only going to. We're only pointing out the evidence and truth of how long Al Avila has been as general manager, how long Brad Ausmus has been as a manager, and the history with Dombrowski as then GM with the Tigers, and whatnot. And it's just ridiculous for fans to think of such negativity. That for a fan, for example, to come up with an excuse that anybody in the Tigers dugout or front office that says, "Oh, Ausmus is great," and Al Avila, and they say Al Avila is just going to straight up agree. No, come on. They still must be thinking Dave Dombrowski is the general manager of the Tigers. Where the hell are we at in society today as a Tigers fan base? In the old days? I mean,
it's not 96 with Randy Smith. Trust me, it's nowhere near that. But it comes it comes to a point, like I mentioned to you, it seems like eons ago, but on an episode before, when you go this long, this starved, without a championship, you tend to get desperate. It's like a junkie looking for an itch. He's got to get it any type of way he can. And if the Tigers fans, they feel, knowing that the window is closing or might have already been closed, window probably have already asked closed. They just don't know yet. But in their minds, the window is still open. Still got Mickey. Still got JB. You have JD Martinez now just enough, and some of these other guys, Iglesias. The payroll, the talent is there. You have a general manager that's committed to sabermetrics. Mike Ilitch is still alive. They feel, listen, in the playoffs, have your starting rotation lined up. Verlander, Fulmer, Boyd. For instance, maybe if Zimmerman gets his shit together, maybe he'll be in the start, but most likely probably be in the bullpen. And then take your chances. Timely pitching, great pitching, timely hitting. you have a shot. So they'll be willing to take that, even if it means, most likely Brad Ausmus probably gets an extension as a result. But like I said, when you've gone this long with the championship, you'll probably take any measure, any method, any reason to finally get that elusive crown.
Yeah. And speaking of desperation, Al Avila, is the guy that we encourage to be desperate after this year, especially if the Tigers don't make the playoffs. Even if they did, they still wouldn't go that far because of Brad Ausmus's poor decision making. As always, that's why Al Avila has a smarter brain than Dave Dombrowski. Al Avila has a wider sense of urgency than Dave Dombrowski. Al Avila has the eyes, unlike Dombrowski. Al Avila is not as arrogant as Dave Dombrowski. Al Avila is still like a rookie GM, a rookie head general manager, unlike Dave Dombrowski, who has had experience only to be arrogant. Al Avila's not that arrogant. He's not. He doesn't. Did he always suck up to Dave Dombrowski? No. Like I pointed out, Dave Dombrowski does not use sabermetrics. Al Avila does. I'm not trying to assume that Al Avila is going to fire Brad Ausmus after the season. I don't even know that yet either. But we got to give him a chance. We got to give Al Avila a chance at the end of the season. So, it's just those fans that make those excuses are just not backing it up good enough. They're just not. They're just their reasons for their beliefs that Ausmus may return are delusional, or maybe just wrong, or in other words, they're jumping the gun on something in terms of Ausmus. It's just mind-boggling. And Jeff Moss wanted Ausmus gone, even if the Tigers finish close in the wild card standings. He doesn't even care if they make the playoffs, and I agree with that. I agree with his view, with what he wants. He said that he's not saying that it'll happen, but did he say that it won't happen? No. If you're saying so, if there's anybody that's saying that Ausmus may or will return next year, you're just jumping the gun. I'm not saying you're wrong yet, but you're jumping the gun. So I'll give them a chance to let the season play out and see if they're right. I'm not gonna jump the gun either and say they're wrong either. I'm trying to be fair here. This is all the truth that we reveal here on this podcast. This is the podcast that gets straight to the point and doesn't deliver any nonsense. No bullshit whatsoever. So that's it. You already listened to Jeff Moss's take on Ausmus on the DSR podcast, episode 45, and now you listen to us, episode 227 of the Michigan Sports Truth on Spreaker, the Week in Review, synchronized with Sports Radio Detroit, Sports Radio Detroit. Now, Tigers, the 3-game set with the Minnesota Twins. Then they're back home against the Kansas City Royals. Saturday's game at 1:05 on Fox National Broadcast Television. Then they're home against the Indians for 4, and then they're in Atlanta.
Which they'll lose.
Yeah, the Braves.
4 games, which will probably lose.
Oh, yeah, the Indians, yeah.
Cleveland series. They'll get their asses kicked and one more time at Cleveland, and then, of course, as a last desperate Hail Mary, hope to try to sweep the horrible Atlanta Braves. Even though it's on the road,
possibly
but still.
Lose, yeah. Because the Indians have had the Tigers' number this year.
Yeah, it's getting close to nut-cutting time, people.
13-2.
So it's now or never for the Tigers. If they have any shot of trying to make the playoffs, they got to do whatever they can against Kansas City and against Atlanta as well. Because if they win 2 games against Cleveland in this last series, I'll be shocked.
But let me get back to my rant. This is why I had my hashtag Tank to Fire Ausmus, because I thought it might help the possibility of the Tigers firing Brad Ausmus, because it's just not worth it. The more the Tigers root for the fans to win, no matter how desperate they are, the 32-year World Series championship drought, the more they are rooting for Ausmus to possibly return, because of their beliefs or the injuries themselves, or how close the Tigers are and what Al Avila may think. It's still out there, but it's two-sided. There are 2 sides to this. One side in which the Tigers keep Ausmus, and then the other side where the Tigers fire Brad Ausmus. Both sides are totaled up here. So with all that covered, we got a little NBA news here. Vegas has predicted earlier on Tuesday this week the total wins for each NBA team for the forthcoming 2016-2017 regular season. The former NBA champion Golden State Warriors at 66.5 wins. Vegas has them. The current and first ever time Cleveland Cavaliers and the San Antonio Spurs tied for second at 56.5. And then our Detroit Pistons and Portland Trail Blazers tied for 8th at 46.5. And Vegas has the Pistons finishing them, as indicated, to finish second place in the Central Division. Is that correct, Ed?
Yes, that is so, Taylor. The Cleveland is listed as the odds-on favorite, as they should, to win the Central Division at 1 to 10 odds, whereas the second best team, or rather the team with the second best odds at 12 to 1, are the Pistons. Followed shortly behind them by Indiana at 15 to 1. As for the rest of the division, Milwaukee is at 25 to 1, and Chicago, even with the addition of Dwayne Wade and Rajon Rondo to go along with Jimmy Butler, the Bulls are ranked at 40 to 1 odds to win their division. That's saying something. I mean, it's not saying they're. It's not really an indicator of, oh wow, this is how the order of the divisions will go. But it's quite interesting to know how much confidence that Vegas has, not only in the Pistons, but also confident they feel in the Bulls just not being a very good, either not being nowhere near good enough to compete for the division, or probably maybe not be that good this year. You can look at that either way. Slight correction, by the way, Taylor, I might have given you the wrong information. Actually, it has the Pistons listed at 45.5 wins, tied with Oklahoma City. Not 46.5, but still,
so they're tied for 9.
So it's around the number that they had last year, and they set a bar. Also, minor note before we get to 5 questions, there was a thing I knew something had slipped my mind regarding the Michigan game. I needed and wanted to compliment how well their special teams acted for the second week in a row, because it was a big reason why they got back into the game. Whether it be due some part to Colorado, the punter kicking the ball literally into the ass of his own offensive lineman, but still, those bad plays, it was A, that's how Michigan got on the board, and B, set up good field position for Michigan to score on another touchdown and get back in the game. So that was a big, big part. And, of course, like the Peppers touchdown punt return later on. So special teams, once again, playing a vital role for Michigan second week in a row.
All right, with that being said, it's time for 5 questions. Are you ready, Ed?
Well, we've done enough ripping on a lot of people tonight's show, so I think it's about time to let the questions rip for themselves. So let them rip, Taylor.
Oh, yeah, baby. Question 1. Do we want the Lions to tank again this time for the entirety of 2016, or is it too easy of a schedule?
I'm not sure if they'll necessarily tank. Even though I want them to miss out on the playoffs so Jim Caldwell can be fired, they have enough talent where it'll be shocking if they go 3-13 or 4-12 or even 5-11. If they get themselves to around 7 wins, 8 wins, something to that effect, then that would speak to how well their talent can perform, and it speaks to how they just need a proper guidance in the head coach department that'll get them over to that next level.
Question number 2. Did the Spartans become overconfident with their 36-7 lead over the Irish, even in a winning effort?
Yeah, it had to play the part. When you're up 36-7 and you allow the other team to score the reel off 21 points unanswered, and you're gaining momentum, and it takes to you draining out the clock on the last drive, getting a few crucial key first downs to get it. You took your foot on the pedal, you got cocky, you're overconfident, it almost came back to bite you in the ass. Now, thankfully, for their case, for Michigan State's case, they were able to get their shit straight, get their heads out of their asses, and did focus long enough to finish one last drive to close out the game. So, but to answer your question, yes, they definitely did get overconfident when they got that big of a lead.
Question number 3. Are the Chippewas going to continue their undefeated streak by being the Virginia Musketeers?
Musketeers, unless you mean, I think, slight correction, I think you mean the Cavaliers.
Cavaliers, my bad. Thank you.
That's okay, you're good. I don't know, it's a little bit tough to see. This is a team that's currently, they are 0-3, so that might actually be a good thing for them. So things are looking likely. Never say never, but they were 4-8 last year. They're 0-3 this year, and the way Central Michigan's been playing, it could be a good starting point for the way they perform in this non-conference schedule to see them get a win before heading into MAC play. Great boost for them. It could bode well for how not only they did for the season, but potential. We're talking top 25 rankings. If they sweep their non-conference schedule and have a good showing in conference play, maybe even win the conference, they could possibly see themselves at the end of the year, as one of those last teams, just getting on to that final top 25 ranking of the year, that type of thing. So things are looking up for the Chips. It's been a while since we said that, but, it's looking good so far.
Question number 4, and this is a really good one. Get ready for this. Was the Tigers' slippage in the standings over the past weekend in Cleveland a sign that Brad Ausmus' job is in hotter water?
Absolutely, because at the very least, if you're not catching Cleveland, you're falling behind in the wildcard standings. And if you just flat out miss the playoffs, period, I don't care however you spin this. This is 2 years in a 3-year process now where you just flat out miss playoffs. And in the 1 year that you did get there, you got fucking swept out of the first round. So this would be a bad omen for Ausmus if the Tigers were not able, or at the very least, get to the play-in or a tie-break or whatever, get a chance at the play-in game for a wild card spot. So yeah, it is very imperative for the future of Brad Ausmus as manager of this team if he has any type of shot, they need to get their shit straight and try to do whatever they can, and at the very least tie it up. So maybe they'll force a play-in game for the second wildcard spot at the very least.
And finally, question number 5: are we over or under 45.5 wins for the Pistons via Vegas?
Oh hell yeah, over, way over. First and foremost, seeing what they did. Yeah. I'll just say this. I'll just keep it short and simple. Seeing what they did with Tobias Harris after the trade deadline, helping them get into the playoffs. Not to mention the fact they had a shitty bench last year. Still got the wins that they got. They improved that tenfold in the off season. Not to mention the fact you give Harris a full off season and training camp to get more adjusted to how things go along with the system and how Stan Van Gundy runs things with the team. Oh yeah, I definitely without question expect an over. In fact, my ceiling is set. It's 50 wins here. If you don't get 50 wins, something's wrong with this team.
All right, well, for all the listeners and fans out there, if you want to answer those questions, just replay the episode and answer them in the comment bank below this episode. Well, we shot a lot of fireworks here tonight with a lot of this and a lot of that. And again, we apologize for any cruel language on this podcast, but that's why we marked it explicit for the first time ever. Isn't that unbelievable?
Yeah, first time for everything.
Yep. So that's going to be all she wrote for episode 227 on the Michigan Sports Truth, the Week in Review. Ed, thanks again so much for your help. I'll talk to you again on episode 228, the second edition of the Football in the Mitten preview.
Yeah, and, let's hope things go well this weekend so that I won't be in a complete murderous rage for next week's show. Although it probably will be good because you get to hear more anger and more vitriol.
All right. Maybe we'll save that for the next week in review on episode 229. If the Lions lose again in the same type of fashion in Lambeau
my
Field.
health long term, let's hope not. My long term health, let's hope not.
Oh, man.
All right, Taylor, take it easy.
All right, thanks. And before we sign off, I want to remind everyone to share this episode and our entire podcast on social media. Have their friends share that as well. And follow me on Spreaker as Taylor Phillips, online at Spreaker.com, because I want to tell them that the Michigan Sports Truth podcast here on Spreaker is in search of local advertising sponsors. If anyone has a business that's interested in sponsoring this program, please email me at taylorgatorphillips14@yahoo.com or privately message me on Facebook or Twitter. For Ed Smith, I'm Taylor Phillips. If there's anything you fans want more of or less on our podcast, please let us know. Follow us on Twitter at DT2Phillips and EdSmith313. TTFN, ta-ta for now. Bon appetit.